Buddy. I'm excited for this one. We're joined today with the CEO at Somnia Network. We've been seeing a lot of talk around the need for real time and this move to what I call like the Web 2 feel with the Web 3 infrastructure. Somnia is trying to accomplish this by bringing really, really high TPS, transactions per second, to users through their L1. You guys are backed by some big names. You have some big claims, some big aspirations, and all of this just gets me excited because, again, it shows the growth of the industry from where we were. I mean, I remember back years and years ago, back in like 2015, some of the growing pains that we saw back then, and to have, you know, just a few transactions per second for some of these chains doing like very, very advanced things was like a big deal. And now we're talking about seven figures of transactions per second. So it's exciting. Paul, I'd love to get to know you a little bit better, your background, and then jump into what Somni is doing.
Cool. Yeah. So do you want just like history, where I've come from, what I've done before?
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Paul. I'm an engineer by trade. So I did computer science at uni. Spent 3 years at Goldman, so in finance for my sins. I'll be honest with you, I did that for money. I do like finance. Like I'm into it in my spare time, but it wasn't really my vibe. So I always wanted to work in the games industry ever since I was a kid. I love video games. I played them all my life. I was always a bit scared to go into like the AAA games industry because I heard some horror stories. But I joined a very early stage startup called Improbable. So I joined there when there was 4 of us. And we grew from 4 to, when I left, we were about 1,200. We'd raised, I think, $700 million, was like a big business by the end. We pivoted a lot. We primarily, at the end of it, sold technology and services to the games industry. That's kind of what we did. So my journey there, I did all the jobs pretty much, ranging from an engineer on the core tech. I was the first support guy when we first started selling the tech to the games industry. I was a sales guy, so I went around the world selling to the AAA games industry, to the AA games industry, to the independent industry, so all up and down the stack. I was the head of product, so kind of made sure we actually building a cohesive product. I did product marketing, so kind of got the commercial side of the business actually working with the engineering product side, then ran the commercial side of the business for a while. So I did the whole gamut basically of like building and taking stuff to market. Web3 wise, I got into the space 16, 17. I never quite got Bitcoin. I now own a lot of Bitcoin, but Bitcoin for me was a bit like, why is this important? I didn't quite get it because it was really hard to actually transfer value between two people. It was really slow, and I was like, I don't quite get this. But when Ethereum came around, I was like, wow, this is awesome. This kind of globally distributed ledger with a compute platform on top of it. I was like, this is going to change the world. I had so many ideas, and I was like, this is so cool. So I internally pitched it really hard. I was like, we need to bring all of our games on chain. This is going to be the future of digital assets. This is going to be how everyone transacts in the future. They thought I was mad. They looked at me like, you're crazy. Pitched it again, eventually convinced them to give me a small research team. And we started to do some proof of concepts on how you would have digital assets in games on top of Ethereum even back then. It didn't work out. Unfortunately, it was a really nice idea, but Ethereum was just way too early. And like everything just exploded and broke all the time. We're like, okay, nice idea. Let's put that in the corner for now. Fast forward to 2019, 2020, we've now started to go into the metaverse industry. It's not called the metaverse industry yet. So we just called it digital events, where we did these kind of large scale activations with people like Major League Baseball, where we did digital baseball matches, Universal Music, we did these kind of music events. And they had like tens of thousands of people, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people show up to these events at the same time. And the issue is all of these events were owned by different businesses. You had this one owned by MLB, this one owned by Universal Music, and we wanted them to all be interoperable. So you as a consumer could go to one of these events, buy like a t-shirt, and then wear that across all of the other experiences as well. And so to do that, we needed like an open, trusted database that everyone could plug into. And I was like, blockchain is a good solution for this because it's a trustless ledger with a compute part to it. So again, start looking at kind of like, how do we solve this problem? How do we get to having hundreds of thousands of people transacting on chain at the same time? Similar problem to 16, 17, where chains weren't fast enough yet. It was much better than then because there was a lot of new chains that were coming out that were more performant, but still really wasn't ready for prime time when you have loads of people interacting on chain at the same time.
Right.
And so at that point, we start doing first-party research into a high-performance blockchain. And that is what Somnia became. The other part of that story that's important is I kind of made it a requirement that had to be on top of the EVM. I've taken products to market in the past where I've tried to get developers to adopt new programming languages and new tool chains. I spent millions of dollars. I failed completely, and I was like, I am not doing that again. Learned my lesson. So EVM was also a must because it's where all the devs were and where the tooling is and where the libraries were. So that was also in the EVM mix system. There was nothing that was fast enough at that point. So that's why we went there. That's why I started building Somnia, and then that spun out, and I'm now taking that to market. So that's my journey. Still an engineer at heart, but I don't get to code very much, unfortunately, anymore.
It sounds like you're very busy. But you have a very, I would say, a great pass of having your hands on like many different areas within like that would be like useful for launching L1, which you understand the engineering side, you understand the product side, you understand the marketing side. And we'll get into it in a bit. Launching L1 is one of the most, it's a big task, and there are a lot of things to it that require you to execute perfectly. And again, we'll get into it in a second. One thing of note here is, again, you guys are EVM compatible. That is something that allows you to bring in builders far more easy. You're not having to teach them about new practices. You're not having to teach them. We've seen this on the Solana side, and I see this as a investor as well. It's a real struggle. On the EVM side, to accomplish this huge claim of 1 million transactions per second, can you walk me through how that actually happens? I've talked to some L2s, I've talked to L3s that are aiming for this big figure of 1 million transactions per second. Some are doing it in parallel and settling and doing their security on EigenDA. Some are basically saying, hey, we're introducing risk here. And there's trade-offs. And again, there are pros and cons to a lot of these. How are you guys doing it? How is it different? What's the moat? Why is Somnia the best?
Cool. This is a big one. So I think the key thing for us was about how do you create a system which has the properties of Web3, so it is decentralized, but have this super high performance. I think a lot of the teams in the space are doing this very high performance, but they're going what I would call really far out on the risk curve in terms of centralization, where it's normally just one big sequencer or machine that's doing everything. I think that's cool, and I think the tech they're building is cool, but I just don't think it's really what Web3 should be. If we end up just putting basically Web2 servers on top of Web3 blockchains.
We saw this morning with CloneX and Artifact. Cloudflare goes down and all the metadata is just gone.
Yeah, it's kind of it's weird. There's a lot of this stuff actually. When you start to really go through the industry more and get deep, you realize that a lot of it is not decentralized. It's decentralized basically, and kind of lives on. Sometimes they have on just one data center. So they may have like, I'm not going to name projects, but they may have like 16, 21 nodes, but they're all running on a single data center. And if that data center goes down, the chain is gone and all the stuff's gone. Like it's kind of weird. But anyway, so go back to Somnia. So basically, it had to be the key target was to get to these high level performance, but be sufficiently decentralized so it actually has Web3 properties. So in order to do that, we basically wrote a blockchain from scratch. So there is no forks or modifications of existing technology or chains. This is a whole rewrite front to back of a blockchain. So we basically took on the execution layer, that's a brand new execution environment. The way it works in simplistic terms is it takes EVM bytecode, compiles that down to machine code, which means it can run really, really fast. And that's basically how we do the execution. So it's EVM compatible and then takes the bytecode and runs it on machines. The next part is the database. We wrote a whole new database from scratch called IceDB. The most prevalent database in the space today is a database called RocksDB, but it was never really designed for blockchain data. It's kind of good for key value stores and good at reading and writing, but really not thought about for blockchain data structures. So we kind of thought from first principles, how would you build a database for the blockchain? Kind of built that, and then also have lots of low-level optimizations that give you really fast read and writes. For context, average read and write time is 15 to 100 nanoseconds. Most databases measure their read and write times in microseconds. So you're talking like massive speed up there. Then the consensus model. So the consensus model is a technique we call multi-stream consensus. It's inspired by a white paper called Autobahn BFT. You guys can go look at it in more detail. Basically, it allows you to push a lot of transactions through the network and still have a decentralized set of nodes. I won't go into, if we want to go into that, we can go into that more detail, but I'll explain that high level there. The last part, which is actually probably the part I'm most proudest of and the big bottleneck, is the networking. So if you want to have a decentralized network, you have to have lots of nodes all the way around the world, and they will have to send a lot of data between each other when you're doing hundreds of thousands, millions of transactions per second.
Yep.
And in order to do that, you need to compress the data down really efficiently and effectively to run that across the public internet. And that's a place, not many people talk about this problem in the space today, but that's a place where we've done massive innovations. We took a lot of learnings we had from the games industry when we built multiplayer and massively multiplayer technology, kind of applied those to blockchain data structures, allows us to compress that data down 10 to 20 times better than anyone else in the market, which allows us to send a lot more data between the nodes, and that means we can actually have a decentralized network.
Why is nobody else is doing this? Is it because it's hard, or I'm curious?
Yeah, it's because it's hard. Like, I think most people in the space come from like a blockchain research background, and they understand blockchain structures, cryptography, all that kind of jazz. We are essentially very good distributed systems engineers that have applied those techniques to the games industry and are now applying them to the blockchain. So we've kind of taken an engineering first approach. And so the innovations at the database layer, that's because no one's done that, because it generally is, you get told at uni, don't write your own database. We decided to go do that. The consensus model, someone else could copy that because there's a white paper there. And then the networking is really special source. And again, it takes techniques that we've learned from all of our games industry experience and kind of applied that to blockchain. That's just because no one's really worked out how to do it yet, I think. Obviously, that's all going to change when the technology becomes open source at some point. But for now, we will have a technical moat. But I think, anyway, we can get into this a bit more. I think technology is like a moat, but I don't think it's a very durable moat. I think in 6 months, 12 months, people will copy our tech and be equivalent. And so really you have to think about other ways you kind of build up that moat and expansion over time. But yeah, so that's basically how we built it, as a front to right rewrite of a blockchain with everything from scratch.
It's rare that I will find a founder of a tech company who is willing to admit what I think is a truth, which is, tech is not, there's no real moat in tech. Or in software to an extent. I had a co-founder at a company literally this week go on a rant about this, and I agreed at the end of it. It's super interesting that you guys are going the way you're going. I understand it a little bit better now. I was gonna go into the IceDB stuff because I was very curious about why IceDB. Great way to answer that, I think. The next question, I think a lot of people who are hearing this, and a lot of this might have gone over their head, is like, okay, sounds good, but does it work? Because it's very easy to be like, hey, we did all this stuff. It's going to be amazing. You're going to love it. It's going to be the greatest. But you guys just did testnet live, public testnet. Are you at a point where, this is up and running? You're figuring out how to get this, sped up to that end target of 1 million transactions per second?
No, I think this is quite different to most people. I think this is because of the way we normally build tech. So the tech is already complete from a performance perspective. So if you went to the testnet today, in fact, people have been doing this. I posted about it on my Twitter. I think last night someone ran a transaction that was like 1.3 gigagas. That's not quite the same as transactions per second, but it's another way to measure throughput. And that's like higher than any other blockchain that exists out there by orders of magnitude today. So you can run stuff on it today at these ridiculous levels if you want to go do that. And people are doing that today. We also have an application called Chunked, which is probably the biggest transaction driver. That's gone to the thousands of TPS easily, and not the chain didn't even break a sweat. So you can go run stuff at really high throughput levels today with the public blockchain that's available now on the testnet. Again, this isn't what most teams do. Most people promise these numbers and then eventually they'll get there. But we actually did. I remember doing the benchmarks and we got these numbers out and we kind of sat there and like, do we publicize this? Because it seems unbelievable compared to what else is out there. We kind of sat there because we sat there and we're like, well, why? Why are we being so modest? Like, we just tell people the actual performance numbers that we run.
Right.
This is how it works, basically. So yeah, in terms of performance characteristics, it's at the level we're talking about here. The testnet really for us is about hardening and checking all the security aspects, because there may be vulnerabilities that we're not aware of yet. And so really we're doing a lot of exercises of people trying to break the chain in different forms and different fashions. Also, we found during the testnet, it's actually about the infrastructure around the blockchain. And this is something that we kind of knew but didn't really think through. So things like indexes, things like wallets, things like subgraphs, all of the bits of infrastructure that sit around the blockchain, that's actually the part now that we're finding that is breaking, because when you're hitting these really high throughput levels, they were never really designed to keep up with a chain this fast. And so we're having to either upgrade them or work with partners to upgrade them to get them to levels where we can meet these performance characteristics. And that's the kind of process we're going through now, which is a very interesting journey. And all the other high performance chains are probably having this as well. And I wish we kind of would work together a bit more. I feel like it's a bit too PvP at the moment, because this is a problem
it's so PvP.
that we solve in the space.
It's so and I will, again, I'm not going to name anybody else, but I've seen this on the high TPS chain side of it is so like, we're better, you're gonna die all, like there is no like, hey, like we're all trying to get to Web 2 feel with Web 3 infra. I don't know what it is. I think at the end though, the users win, because at the end of the day, somebody's going to build something amazing that gives us this high TPS. The fact that you guys have something that is up and running right now, users are using on testnet. And it sounds like, and the big thing here that I want to jump into, which is you're at a point of growth. And you can go two ways with that. There's user growth of, are you getting people into testnet? Are you getting followers? Are you getting people that are like, yes, Somnia. I would go and look at Yap's leaderboard and note that pre-TGE layer one, or just pre-GE tokens right now, you guys are number 5 or 6 for attention right now. So you have some user attention. But the big one that you also mentioned here is infra growth and builder growth. When you're launching L1, yes, your EVMs, you're going to be compatible. There's still some development that needs to go there, but you also need to bring in builders, companies, etc. Can you walk me through that side of what it's been like getting in some of these different builders and infra, and then target who, like, over the long duration, like, who are your target companies that you want using Somnia, and who do you see using Somnia?
Yeah. So in terms of bringing the kind of existing infrastructure players, it's not been particularly hard because of its EVM compatibility.
Yeah.
There's not been a huge lift for them to kind of point their infrastructure at us. I think the problems have come with the performance characteristics and some of them not being able to keep up. And so what we've really done is kind of, it's quite funny. I say we are the chain with the most block explorers. We've like tried all the block explorers. And now we've got to a place where we're kind of okay. But basically, what you'll find is we have probably a lot of choices for different infrastructure providers. And then if you talk to us one-to-one, we'll say we recommend these guys because they can do, if you're going high performance. If you're going for a lower performance application, you don't need it at the end of the day. But if you are, then we have providers we recommend to people. So in terms of getting them over, it hasn't been that hard. The challenge has really been when you work at the scale, can the providers work at the scale, and does it work successfully, and can we get it to work successfully? So in terms of the target demographics, for us, I think we're really focused on the gaming segment. This is because, one, my background, been in the games industry for 12 years, know the place quite well. Two, the kind of improbable connection is very, very useful in terms of a go-to-market partner there, because they have like a small publishing team, they have a game services team, so they can help people build their games, which is very, very valuable. And then three, I think we were kind of, this high performance chain is a really good use case for games. So there's lots of different things here. I think the major one that I see a lot with game developers is cost. So games often sponsor the gas for their game, so that a user, when they go to it, they just click buttons and play. They don't have to go get some random gas token and put it in their wallet and do stuff like that. It's really weird for Web2 users. So they normally sponsor gas. And even for a small game, like 100 DAU, 500 DAU, which is a small game, they're spending like tens of thousands of dollars a month for gas, which is just unsustainable because they're not even making that much revenue. So for us, one of the key propositions is price. Because we have so much throughput and so much block space to sell, we can price it really cheap for them. And then it's around getting them to put more data and logic on chain, which adds more value to their game. So this is things like, we have teams, pretty much all the teams are putting, we call the metadata of their game on chain. So every time there's a headshot in a match, or every time someone wins a match, or every time someone, I don't know, does some event in a game, that'll be registered on chain. And those events then Other people can build companion applications around that and plug into that. So we have people like building prediction markets, to gamble on the outcomes of video games. We have people building leaderboards and companion apps that help kind of modify the game and kind of build up an ecosystem of applications around the game. So for us, I think the big target is game developers, and we're really going heavy into Web2 game developers. The reason for this is I think we need to grow the pie of developer base. If we keep trying to sell to the same group of people, I don't think we'll scale to the level we want the Web3 space to scale to. So we've really focused a lot on the Web2 game developer base. And the way we do that, we kind of explain to them the proposition of Web3, what that can bring to their game, and how they can track users and retain users in a more effective way. And then we convert them over. During that conversion process, we'll actually help them build the game, because often they're like, how do I do these Web3 elements?
Right.
We have a very key partner called Uprising, who kind of work with the game studios in our network to help them do those Web3 components, Web3 elements. And then the Improbable side can bring in their services org, which help them actually build out the technology side as well. So for us, gaming is a massive focus, Web2 gaming in particular. The other one is the entertainment sector. So I kind of talked about this before with Major League Baseball, Universal Music. But this in general is also a very strong part of our go-to-market. I think you would call it, most people call it metaverse, we just call it metaverse. But essentially this is bringing big Web2 consumer brands, allowing them to do digital activations that are on-chain, and then activating their user base with that. So there's many different kind of styles of things. That could be a sporting event, that could be a music event, that could be a fashion event, that could be some kind of one-off experience. That comes in many different flavors and forms. So that's another very important target market and demographic for us. So those are the primaries. We obviously have DeFi in the ecosystem. That's a very important part, because ultimately blockchains are basically financial infrastructure. So you need to be able to trade the assets. So we are looking at Web3 native devs building DeFi applications. The DeFi apps that I'm most interested in are on-chain limit order books. So this is basically like Hyperliquid, but you build it on Somnia. Because of Somnia's performance characteristics, you can basically build a Hyperliquid clone. We've got a couple of teams doing that, and I'm pretty interested in those, because I think it's really cool that you can get properties that you'd have in a centralized exchange, but in a decentralized format with all the good stuff that comes with decentralization. So I think that's going to be a cool set of apps. And then the other one is obviously AI. AI devs, we kind of have two slants. We have one slant that's really focused around this entertainment theme, where they tend to be using generative AI to build content. So you have a couple of teams building kind of like, so you can write prompts and it will generate you out a mini game. So like a very small video game that you can play, send to your friends, maybe you play it for a few minutes, but then you can monetize it with on-chain mechanisms. So it's basically a way that any user now can start building games using AI. There's another team who are building out a deep-in network that you can do 3D model inference. You can type prompts and it will come back with a 3D model and 3D asset. And the vision part here is really enabling more consumers to become kind of UGC creators, where you can make 3D digital objects. Then you can obviously turn them into NFTs and sell them on chain and monetize them. So that's another skew that we're looking at. The other thing is people are just putting the AIs into games in some form or fashion. There's loads of examples of this. I don't know if I'm allowed to say what they are. So one of them, I probably can say this one. One of them is they're essentially using LLMs to put tweets on Twitter, and they have this kind of werewolf style game where people are trying to find the murderer, all interacting through Twitter basically. And then there's on-chain mechanisms and ways to monetize that. So I think that's another way that AI is being used. And then obviously there's the more standard way that we see in Web3, which is like Def AI, where basically you have AI agents trading on behalf of users. So you prompt them and they go and do stuff for you. But I'm most interested in the entertainment ones, because that's very like linked to our vision basically of this kind of chain of entertainment where you have all these different experiences, and then allowing more users to become creators and then monetize through Web3.
A lot to unpack there, but I think it does explain and set you guys that you're not just trying to be another like, hey, we're going to be for high frequency traders. You guys have, because of your background on the gaming side, a real focus on thinking of, okay, yes, it's fast, but what can you do with fast that is consumer facing? And I think that's where like the real Web2 experience comes in. I think it's very interesting that you have kind of leaned that direction against, I think, most others who are going, I think, the hyper fast, hey, you can trade, you can do just DeFi really quickly on chain. One area that I want to ask, because I think a lot of people, and it's a very split conversation point, which is not everybody believes you need on-chain gaming. The people that say, "Hey, on-chain gaming makes no sense. It's good now. Just do a couple things on chain. Throw some of the the game items on chain. We don't need all the metadata on chain." What are these skeptics missing? And I think you kind of touched on it with the prediction market. I didn't think of that before. But what else are they missing? Like, why is on-chain gaming going to be the future?
So this is a very big topic, which I would definitely say is a vision piece. I'll be very clear here. I go to so I have a bunch of people that work, friends of mine that work in the Web2 game industry. They tend to have their own studios. And when I pitch them the Web3 angle, they kind of get, oh, I can monetize easier, digital assets, ownership. They get that story and they can understand that. When I start going into on-chain games and applications and my vision for that, they look at me like, you're a bit mad, mate. So I will just say this is like a future vision thing, but it's something that I'm a big believer in. So the reason is I believe that composable games are the future of the games industry. Let me explain what that is. So if you start enabling developers to easily put data and logic on chain, so you start enabling to do that much easier than you can currently do and make that actually technically viable, other developers can start pulling from that logic and data and use it within their games. That makes their games easier to build faster. So that means you get more video games created. So you have this developer pulling a bit of stuff from here, a bit of stuff from here, and now I've made a new game. This developer can then do the same thing again, but do it even faster because I'm pulling stuff from here and stuff from here and stuff here. You do this over and over and over again. And that just means more video games can be created faster. And that for me is the best way to find video games. If you think about the art of building a video game is kind of like an exploration game where you're kind of going through a map and trying to find out what's fun. If you can iterate faster and work out what is fun, because you can pull off from all these different components and pieces that already exist, you can find more fun video games faster, which ultimately brings in new consumers. So so that's why I'm so big on this idea, because I think this idea of composable games, taking what happened in DeFi and applying that to entertainment and gaming, I think could be absolutely huge. The problem is, first of all, you didn't have the infrastructure to do it. Like if you on-chain games today, most of it cannot be on-chain because of the performance characteristics of blockchain. Just it wouldn't make any sense. It's unviable. So first you need a blockchain that's super fast. The next step that we're really adding to now is the tool chain to make it easy for developers to do that. Today, blockchains just aren't really designed to build on-chain games. They're not what I call reactive. So you can't listen to data and state and react to it on-chain, which is the whole way video games work. If you think about an AI in a game, it's kind of observing the world and going, are the players nearby? I need to go and attack it. You can't do that on-chain today. You have to do that off-chain in a weird manner. And so you need to have what we call reactivity built into the blockchain. So we're adding that to the blockchain as a concept. We're also working on kind of services that make it easier to build on-chain logic and data. So there's a technology called Etherbase, and then libraries inside the game engine so that any game developer can program like they normally would, and then that can be published on-chain much easier. So you need to do all of these different parts of the stack, I think, to really enable this vision. And so people have said this doesn't make any sense because it's just really hard to do, very expensive, and it wasn't even viable before. Now with Somnia, you can make it viable, and now it's just making it super easy for people to do. So that's why I believe the future of more on-chain gaming is very important. I also think there is a killer business model in on-chain games that no one's worked out yet. I think Axie kind of hinted at this a bit. It's something like play and earn, but I don't know exactly what it is yet. But I think there is a killer business model in Web3, which someone who's building a Web3 native game will innovate and find. The games industry goes through step changes when you have new genres occur. When MOBAs happened, when Battle Royale happened, when survival shooters happened, these are called massive player influxes. When new platforms occur, so when console happened, when mobile happened, loads of new players came in, and when new business models occur. So when you had DLC, that was one kind of business model that got a load more money and revenue to the games industry. When you had free to play, that gave access to a load more new players and a load of new people. And I think there is one in Web3, which is like play and earn, which I think is going to be killer. You just need to think about the economics. I think Axie was getting close, but I just didn't think it executed it quite right. There's something there. So that's why basically the composability of games, which then will make more fun games faster, and this new killer business model that I think you can discover from Web3 games. That's why I think the future is on-chain gaming.
I think it's a fair argument, and I I think ultimately we will see it happen. So I'm excited because I don't know. I think we just haven't seen it be done in a way that's sustainable. I think Axie is very close, but you almost have to be an like economist to understand. Okay, when you're making some of these choices, and there is an earn component, you can't ruin the earn side, or it's just play. It's just play at that point again. There is no earning. Nothing has value anymore. Um, on the topic of value and talking to getting these new builders in and working with these different companies, you guys I think announced that you're doing grants. You're having you have a bunch of money allocated to builders. Walk me through, for anybody who's listening, for the number of builders that I know we have in this space who are building and looking for a network to go to. How do they come build on Somnia, and what does the grant and funding process look like with you guys?
Yeah, cool. So if you want to build on Somnia, you just can. It's a public blockchain. I say this flippantly, but there are so many cool apps that have been created during the testnet that now they've shown their application, they've got user traction, and now it's much easier for us to give a grant or do co-investment with an application that's already deployed and already got users. So I would honestly say you should take a look at that and think about that, because you can just deploy something and start building stuff. We have all of the tooling, we have the stuff for the game developers, Sequence, Third Web, Privy wallets, all the kind of infrastructure you need essentially to build anything. So you can just start building. We will then, as like the first stage, we give people a lot of support. So we have a developer relations team and an engineering team that will support you. We often, if we kind of spot you and see you're building something cool, we'll often give you some free infrastructure like indexer credits or RPC or dedicated RPC nodes to give you those high levels of performance if you're building something cool. So even if you just start building in the space, you'll probably start getting some free stuff from us, because we want to incentivize builders to just build cool stuff at the end of the day. So that's kind of like the first track, just start building, I'd say, and then put it on Twitter, at me, I'll find you, and then say, hey, we should take a look at these people are cool. The next place, and then obviously we give you a bunch of support there and give you some kind of free credits and infrastructure, which is helpful to people. The next level up is then kind of getting grant support from us. So we have a grants page. If you go to somnia.network and go into build grants, you can go check that out. So currently we're looking at deploying $10 million over the next year or so in grants. So the way grants work is you apply, we look through your application, we then go through several meetings with you, play test, whatever we need to do. There's then an approval process. We approve you and then essentially give you the money. That money is there's almost no strings attached. There's milestones associated with it, but it generally is quite loose in terms of the way that money is administered or given to you. You just have to get to certain levels of deployment, get to certain user numbers or certain transaction numbers, and you get that money. So that's kind of one way we're helping people. The next way is obviously giving them, if they do become part of the grants program, we also give them a lot more support. So we give people go-to-market support. So we'll kind of introduce our community to the application. You've seen some of this in our current application space. You'll get tens of thousands of users instantly, basically, if you do that, sometimes hundreds of thousands, and lots of follows and stuff on Twitter. So we can help out there, spaces, co-marketing, KOL support. We do all that kind of stuff to help the teams in the ecosystem. Because I think what I've found is there are a lot of really good builders who are building really cool products, but the go-to-market part is kind of a gap for them that they need help filling, and we help fill them there. The next part is helping on the investment side. So if you do want to go to the next level and kind of get investment, so for equities or tokens, depending on how you're structured, we can introduce you to our investor network. So we have some quite big names, ACTC, yeah, SoftBank, Marana, DCG. So basically, and there's a load of other investors in the network there. So even if you're doing, so I think people get intimidated by those names sometimes, but remember, there are things like accelerator programs those investors are doing. Even if you're looking for smaller check sizes, there's almost definitely avenues that we can help out people out there. The other avenue is we have what we call the ecosystem fund. So this isn't very well advertised. We kind of did a big announcement about this. I think I can't remember the number, but it's over $200 million.
I think it was 270 million. 270 I think is what you guys said.
Yeah, 270 million. So that basically is an investment fund that is investing in projects directly. So that is administered by Improbable. And the way that works is you essentially come to us and you essentially will pitch Improbable like you would pitch a VC for co-investment into your project. They will take equity or tokens from that, so they have upside there. So it's not like a grant where you kind of get the money and then can go on with things. There's a co-investment structure there, but they also have this model that's called Venture Builder. So they will really help you build your company and build out your business. So they will help you on the legal side, they'll help you on the people side, they'll help you on the operations side, they can help you with hiring, they can help you with engineering. So they have a lot of tools in the toolbox, because what Improbable has become basically is this company that helps build companies essentially. And so they have loads of ways they can help you out to help you build your business. And that's, I think, probably one of the key superpowers of Somnia, the fact that we have this strong partnership and lineage with Improbable that is a company builder that will help build projects in the ecosystem, I think is going to be very, very important for us. The other avenue you can go down is accelerators. So we only have one of these at the moment focused around gaming. So this is in partnership with Uprising. They're essentially doing that thing that I talked about with the Web2 game studios. They're helping studios do Web3 go-to-markets effectively and all the kind of mechanisms they need to do that. So that could be token design, that could be NFT design, that would be go-to-market support in terms of how you run a Discord, how you run Twitter, how you work KOLs, how you get listed on exchanges, all those kind of things that help you do essentially. But that's primarily focused on gaming at the moment. I think we are talking about doing another accelerator that's a bit broader, and we'll probably have that rolled out in the next few months. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways we can help out projects, ranging from very low touch and it gets higher and higher touch essentially. And that's, I think, something that you need to do. If you're creating technology that gives new capabilities, what I've learned is you have to help the projects utilize those capabilities. You can't just expect people to build stuff and
in a perfect world, you just sit back and everything comes to everybody builds, but you have to be hands-on.
I've done this. This is my third platform product, so it's a nice idea, but it doesn't work in reality. I wish it did. Build it and they will come. That was my first product. I love that product so much. It was so cool from a technology perspective. It basically allowed you to build MMORPGs really easily. So it's like a SaaS platform as a service for MMORPGs. And I was like, best product ever. So cool. Completely failed because I didn't understand anything about go-to-market, about ecosystem building, about community. I didn't get any of that. I kind of just like, the tech's really good. Wow, people just building on it. And so it doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
It's good to hear that, though. I think we overlook a founder or CEO's experience of have they experienced and seen those pitfalls. And I certainly see it as a venture investor where you talk to people and they haven't gotten punched in the face. They haven't gone down the route of like running a company and being like, oh, like you actually need to do X, Y, and Z to find success. The fact that you understand these things makes me excited to know that, okay, I mean, for the plethora of points you just listed for builders, there is no excuse for one, if you're a builder, not to be looking at Somnia from a builder infra white glove onboarding experience with you guys, but also from like a funding experience of like, there's tons of money, there's tons of resources, there's tons of intros that can be made. And that is like, to anybody who's building something, that's an overwhelming magnet to come to somebody. And not enough people, I think, understand that, which is amazing. On top of that attraction to users and new use cases, etc., I'd love to understand of like where you are today. How far off is mainnet? Where in the building process? Like I'm curious though, like just where are we? Because for me, this all sounds amazing, but I have no idea. Like, okay, are we in testnet? Are we going to be another? Again, I'm not going to name these people, but like we had people have been in testnet for 2 years now, 3 years, and mainnet's nowhere in sight.
Who's 2 years?
I'm not going to name people. Chat probably knows. It's bad. It's bad, man. But like what? So actively today, you guys are doing questing. There's points. You know, there possibly could be a token that you guys are going to do. I'm not sure where you can talk on that, but also with like mainnet, what does timeline look like? And maybe not even specific dates, but just like what is the process of getting to mainnet look like?
Yeah. So I can't give specific dates to
Right.
mainnet. What I will say is, unless there are loads of technical things that come up soon, it will be this year, and we're targeting as soon as we can, is the way I put it. Because ultimately, one thing I would say that kind of gives a hint to timelines is we need to go to mainnet for the projects in the ecosystem. Like they currently can't monetize because
Right.
we're not in mainnet, and they need us to be in mainnet, and we're very aware of that. And people will see now that there's a lot of the ecosystem's been announced, projects are running, and they need to be able to monetize at some point. And so that should probably give you a hint that there is a pressure to move to mainnet. So it's not going to be 2 years, unless something goes really wrong that we don't expect. But I don't think that will happen at this point. So for me, the steps, there's a few different things that need to become true. One is what I call enough day one content. So we've been building up the ecosystem, kind of getting projects involved. I think there are, this number goes up, but like day to day. So I think there are about 50 or so signed ecosystem projects. They're not all announced yet. And so for us, it's having enough what I call day one content. So enough ecosystem projects that are live, that are ready for the mainnet. So we don't launch a mainnet and have a dead chain. I've seen that before, and it's not a good play. I kind of think about it like a console launch, where like we want to have enough good applications that people can be sticky to, and the chain actually be used, rather than just like launch a chain and be like, hopefully we'll fix this later. And so that for me is like one requirement, where we have to have enough kind of projects and ecosystem ready to go. So that's actually probably the hardest thing in terms of the timeline right now, is kind of making sure those projects are ready in time, or enough projects are ready in time. So how many that is, I won't tell people, but hopefully May, lots more stuff comes out, and then we should become more ready. The next thing is the community side. I think actually the community side, we're in a good place, but essentially you need enough users that are interested in exploring the ecosystem, being inside the ecosystem, such as you can launch a chain. Because if you launch with no users, again, that's not going to look good and not going to be a particularly successful launch. So that's gone. That I think we're kind of at the right place there. The other thing that we look at and think about is the mind share we have in the space. So making sure that we are a well-known brand, because if you launch and no one knows who you are, probably not going to have a particularly great launch.
Very true. How are you measuring mind share?
Yeah, so we use Kaito, and then we have our own internal metric that we use. And we also use Cookie 3 as well. So we look at Cookie 3, Kaito, and then our own internal metrics. Kaito's been very useful there. But I think the issue I found with marketing metrics, this is standard, is once you give a team a goal for a marketing metric, they will kind of optimize all of their marketing flows to get that metric up. And then I kind of sit there like, well, that metric's good, but this metric's not good anymore. So that's not quite the balance of what it does to have. So, but mindshare, I think, is an important one. Product usage is the other one. Again, that's tracking very well, but we need to make sure that people are able to use the product and it works well. And then technical. So technical for us now is really around the security elements. So you'll see some stuff come out of us in the next few weeks. We're doing things like bug bounties. We're doing a bunch of audits and kind of security checks behind the scenes. So we need to make sure we're ready and secure, such that we can launch a mainnet, take on hundreds of millions of dollars of TVL, hopefully billions of TVL, and then it not get into any issues, basically. That's, I think, the biggest risk to a chain. If you have a hack and you lose people's money, it's game over, basically.
It's game over. Yeah.
Unless you have a big investor that's willing to step in, it's game over. Halts, I think it's okay, because lots of people have pauses of the chain. Even that, though, we want to get to a place where it's kind of just rock solid. That's why maybe people spend 2 years in testnet, but I don't really know. I think also people launch testnet way too early. Like when we launched our DevNet in October, it was already what most people would call testnet. We just called it DevNet because we didn't feel like that was the right branding of it. So our testnet was really almost ready for prime time when we launched it in testnet. The major things we've been doing are kind of scaling up the validator set, so becoming more decentralized, and then bringing on the ecosystem projects. So those are the kind of major things we look at and major things we think about. And tracking well for all of them.
Validators is an interesting conversation. We've seen, again, I hate to keep being like, we've seen drama other places. How are you different? But I think it's a good conversation point of, what is your plan for validators? What are you launching with? And then how do you scale? Like, what is your plan for scaling that validator set over time?
Yep. So we're planning to launch. So we're planning to get to 100 validators initially. So that'll be. So when we say validators, we mean 100 different organizations running nodes. We don't mean just there's 100 nodes.
Not 100 being run by like Improbable. Like,
yeah, exactly. We could
decentralized.
We could go do that now. Just run them all on GCP. It's like, 100 nodes. No, this is 100 different people running validators across the network. That we're primarily scaling out with professional validators. I don't know why I do that quotes. There are people in the space who are basically professional grade validators who are in the business of validating. People like Luganos, people like Artifact. You guys would know the names. It's all the big names, basically. And then to get to 100, though, you need to go longer tail as well. So that's the first level of scaling, which we call permissioned scaling, where essentially we know the validators, but it's still a decent level. I think 100 is a good starting point to be a sufficiently decentralized network. And that's what we're targeting. It's sufficiently decentralized. We're not going to be as decentralized as like Ethereum or Bitcoin, just because the performance characteristics mean it's unlikely you would get enough people with hardware that could run a node for that. But maybe we will. So the next phase will then be, and this will probably be Q3 this year, but we could go to mainnet and go to this phase, just to be clear, is what we call semi-permissionless. So this is where you can join the network as an individual, but we have to ensure that you're up to the standard of the network. So we have to ensure you have the hardware, you have the bandwidth, you have the capability to run a node on the network. Because the way the network works, essentially, the validators will need to be at a certain speed. If you're not keeping up with that speed, you get kicked out of the network. And so we need to make sure everyone's keeping up to that speed, otherwise get kicked out. The final stage, which it's a very interesting debate we're having internally about when we do this. I want to do it this year. Some people want to leave it till next year, is then fully permissionless validators. So anyone can join the network as a validator. That you need to implement things like slashing. You need to ensure that you have the right crypto economics. So this is getting into a bit of inside baseball, but if you don't have enough market cap as a token, it's very hard to support a large validator set and generate a decent yield for the validators. So you need to have a decent level of market cap to get to higher levels of decentralization, which is not something people really think about. It's like, well, why can't you just run 10,000 nodes? If you're at $100 million market cap, you can't afford to run 10,000 nodes.
Right. You will bleed yourself to death.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to make sure you're scaling with your market capitalization as well. And that's why 100 nodes is a good place. But if we want to get to like 1,000 plus, we're going to need to have really good FDV in order to get to that level, so that validators can actually generate a decent yield. So it becomes a crypto economic problem more so than it does a technology problem at that point.
I was going to ask, my follow-up question, that was going to be like, okay, for attracting those people, what does the financial incentive look like? How are you prioritizing good yield? That's a great answer to it.
Yeah, I can't actually tell you the actual yields, but yeah, this is a really interesting topic, and I talk about it with other founders. Pricing the security of an L1, like how much you should pay your validators, how much you allocate, that is a really tough challenge. And this is why I love products like EigenLayer. I wish we could plug into. I've tried to work out how we could plug into more, because I think what they're doing is just really good. They're basically making a market for giving you validators and decentralizing your networks, which I think is really useful, because as a person who's building the tokenomics of an L1 out, it's really hard to know where you price this, such that you're giving the validators a decent amount of money so they can cover their costs and make some money. But you're not overpaying, just bleeding out your token, paying validators ridiculous yields. I think that balance is very nuanced and very interesting. We've obviously done a ton of modeling. I think the way we've done it, and this is actually a very good hint to a lot of people in the space, and maybe help a lot of people out, because I know people struggle with this. Think about what is the break even of your network. So what do you need to pay validators such that they're making a decent amount of money? How much revenue does the network need to make in terms of gas? And then back calculate it from that. That's kind of what we've done. And then work out how many validators you have in your network based on that. That's kind of how we've done it.
I would say working for break even is a smart way to approach that, solving that problem. If you don't do that, you're probably going to, again, bleed yourself to death. This is so fascinating for so many reasons. We might have already touched on this, and you kind of bringing up EigenLayer made me rethink of this question. But like, why L1 versus going and building an L2 or an L3?
Yeah, good question.
I'd love to like concretely ask that.
Yeah, I actually wanted something to be an L2 really badly. I love the ethos of Ethereum, and I think the space, I wish we all pushed together basically. And being an Ethereum, I think ultimately people are building in a similar direction if you're an L2. Whilst an L1 is directly competitive with Ethereum, I'm not gonna. Some people try to sugarcoat it and are like, no, we're all friends. It's like, you are building a competitor at the end of the day if you're building an L1.
Correct.
So I wanted somebody to build an L2. The problem was we couldn't work out a way to push the throughput back onto the L1 in a cost-effective manner. And I don't know how people are doing this. I'll be honest with you, and I wonder when we get to tokenomics and economics of these high performance L2s, whether they won't have the economics or whether they're subsidizing it massively and they're just not telling you and hoping that the technology catches up over the next
So
2-3
some
years.
might say it's called a bridge round.
Yeah, they might be putting a bet that the technologies will catch up. That's
Right.
the other thing as well. But we just couldn't work it out. Optimistic rollups, I can't work it. The throughput's not good enough, and I couldn't work it out. Alternative DA layers, there wasn't anything that could do the throughput because you need over 10, you need like 100 megabytes per second. Nothing can do that. Nothing could do that at that point in time. People are saying they're going to be able to do that like next year, but it wasn't at that point in time we were building it. ZKs, again, I don't want to throw shade on different technologies, but they're just so expensive. Like literally to do a ZK rollup. I mean, there are teams in the space that are really helping here, optimizing that cost down, but it's just so expensive. And I was just like, we're never going to make something that's economically viable if we go down this technology route. And I think people are all betting that the tech will catch up. But we've been building Somnia for like 3 years. The tech still hasn't caught up. So like, maybe it will, but I don't know how long it's going to take. And that's why I was like, we just can't take the risk to hopefully these technologies catch up. And when and if they do, then maybe we could change some of this architecture to work as an L2 in the future. I personally really like that. I know my co-founder Herman shouts at me for this all the time. He's like, don't say that. We're going to be an L1. I'd like us all to work together. But yeah, we just couldn't work it out from a cost and economics perspective. And I try to ask this on Twitter sometimes, like, can someone explain to me how this makes economic sense? And everyone just skirts around me, doesn't answer my question. I'm like, okay.
But I think I've seen some other people ask that question, and a lot of it is hypotheticals of like, hey, in the long tail, this is how it plays out, but we aren't there yet. So a lot to be discovered as time goes on. It's just going to get interesting. And that's probably the best part of like building in this space is it's such a dynamic environment of we could get to the long tail of this and everybody looks around. They're like, all right, this didn't work. We should have done L1. And somebody is sitting over here like, we told you. Like, that would be great for you. I'm curious from like a call to action for people listening here. We've talked about builders. We've talked about testnet. Like, what is your biggest ask right now to like people listening that you guys need or want or would like to see people do?
Yeah, so there's kind of two things. One is to the builders, it's sort of like a gauntlet. It's like now you have a chain that has these capabilities in terms of throughput, in terms of latency, in terms of cost. What can you build now on chain that you couldn't build before? What kind of app did you have in your mind that you're like, this is a really cool idea, but then when you actually tried to build it, it's like I can't do it with current blockchain infrastructure. Because what we're really trying to find is those builders that want to innovate and want to kind of push the envelope and utilize the technology and the performance. So for me, it's putting them to gauntlet builders. What can you build on chain that you couldn't build before? And then for users, I'd say come explore the testnet. So if you go to Somnia.network as a builder, you can find out about our grants and all that kind of stuff. And as an end user, you can explore the testnet. There's a load of different dApps you can try out. We have a Quest platform that you can try out. So we're really also pushing the user side of things. We want people to explore and have fun. Because ultimately, if they have fun in the experiences and use the apps and have a good time, they're going to come back for the mainnet. So that's another part as well, which as a user, I'd say just come explore. Follow us on Twitter, Somnia_network. You'll see all the new ecosystem stuff. And yeah, if you like games, I'd definitely hang out around Somnia. We're going to have a lot of fun games coming out.
I assume you can't hint at what those games might look like or who they might be from quite yet.
Oh, there's still a bunch announced, right? So there's I think the one that you can play today is a game called Chunked. So this is a fully on-chain Minecraft. Literally, when I say
I
fully
did
on-chain,
see that. I was going to ask you about this. I saw that and I was like, wait, every single piece of metadata is on chain.
It's not just metadata; it's position updates. Every time a player moves, their positions are being synchronized through the blockchain and sent to all the other players. So it's literally being used as a multiplayer server.
So when another player is in the game, their viewpoint is actually being updated
replicated.
in
real time,
off of blockchain data, not on a server, but
yeah, yeah, I know. It's I probably wouldn't use a blockchain for that. I'll be honest with you, but yes, that application does.
Yeah,
that.
no, that seems like because you mentioned like the prediction market of like if you get a headshot, it's there's verifiable on-chain data saying that. For prediction markets, I'm like, love that. Like, will this player in this tournament get 10 headshot kills? Like, that's cool. I like that. but like the actual data of the player and like, oh, they shot 30 bullets and they're reloading, like all of that as metadata.
All that is on chain, yeah. So every time you move, all your position updates are synchronized. So we've had tests where hundreds of people are in the same space, all can see each other, all being synchronized through the blockchain. Every time you craft anything, that's fully on chain. Every time you mine a block being moved around is on chain. Everything's on chain. That game is crazy. That is probably like that's the craziest thing that you could build, I think, and be reasonable. People have been talking about, oh, does that mean we can build Call of Duty on chain? Don't build Call of Duty on chain.
Let's not do that.
That's too crazy. It's good for like social style games
Right.
like Minecraft, or I don't know if you did like a Fall Guys or something like that, or strategy style games, card games. But doing like first person competitive shooters, I built multiplayer games for like 12 years. Blockchains will never do that. They're just not designed to do that. That's really silly. I've seen people say this on Twitter, and I just sit there like, no. But yeah, so that's probably the craziest one. Then you have games like Maelstrom. So Maelstrom is this battle royale game, but with pirate ships. So it kind of fuses together Assassin's Creed Blackfire, the bit where you fight with pirate ships, and battle royale, and then dials up to 11. That's a really cool game, very fun. Puts all the metadata on chain. So it's a Web 2.5 game rather than a pure Web 3 game. And then also has NFTs and a token associated with it. So that's a really cool game. There's loads of others. If I pick just a few, it's like picking my favorites. I'm going to pick one that we most recently announced. That's how I can be fair. So Mask of the Void, that should be coming out in a few weeks. That's basically an ARPG roguelike. So if you like roguelikes, you'll like this a lot. So roguelikes are just games where you kind of go through dungeons and experiences. They're procedure generated. You have to survive for as long as you can, and you level up basically. Very much my kind of game. Very high skill level, but very cool game. The nice thing about that game is WebGL, so you can play it all within a web browser. You don't need a gaming PC or anything like that, which is good if you don't have any high quality hardware. But yeah, there's loads of games. I could probably talk for the next half an hour on the different games.
That's great. That means you aren't going to launch as a dead chain. There's builders. There's tons of things happening. There's tons of things for people to go check out. And part of that, again, we mentioned the questing, but there's points there. You can go get rewarded for interacting with Somnia right now, which possibly could be, who knows what that's going to turn into, but you know, we've seen this play out. I know that like you can't say things. I'm trying to be helpful to you and not like put you on the spot.
What I would say is think about other projects that have used points. What happened?
I think a lot of people are like, just ask them the DM question. I'm gonna be a good host and not put you on the spot. But yes, they need to get active if they wanted to earn those points. What is the best way, I think, for people going forward here to start? And yeah, obviously go follow you guys on Twitter, but where's the community hub? How do they get in there? And then how do they get activated as soon as possible?
Yeah, so go to somnia.network and you'll find the user journey there quite quickly. Generally, the hub is Discord, where you'll find all the latest stuff. But also, you can just follow us at somnia_network. If you go to testnet in the top right, there's kind of an experience that will kind of bring you through the user journey, show you all the different applications, get you to the Quest platform and all that kind of stuff. So I'd probably just get to somnia.network and you'll find it. You should find it. We are trying to improve the website though. It's a bit need to get that better.
I'm excited, man. I appreciate you coming on and talking. I'm looking forward to what you guys have coming out. I have checked out the testnet. There's some games here I need to check out in person. But looking forward to that, and I'm also looking forward to chatting to you as this develops over time. But Paul, thank you for coming on. Everybody, thank you for tuning in today and talking, listening to this talk with Somnia, and I hope you go check them out.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, brother. We'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.